Dr. Akintola, we are very grateful that you're here and willing to spend some time with our community this morning.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to start by asking you to share with us a little bit of your own background, your own story, where you were born, your education, and how you found your way to Lagos State University.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I'd like to say a special good morning to Mr. President of this great college and the student population and our lecturers and professors. I was born in a small city called Ile-Ife in Osun State in Nigeria. Osun State is one of the 36 states in Nigeria. It's Ile-Ife is about 180 kilometers away from Lagos, former capital of Nigeria. I started my education from the elementary level, we call it primary school in Nigeria, and my secondary education took place in an Arabic and Islamic school called Al-Mahad al-Arabi al-Nigeri. That is Arabic Institute of Nigeria in Ibadan. Ibadan is about 120 kilometers away from Lagos. I spent 5 years in this college, in this high school, because secondary schools in Nigeria in those days, you spend 5 years there. Today, the secondary school system has been split into two: 3 years in the junior secondary school, GSS, and 3 years in the senior secondary school, SSS. So I spent 5 years in the secondary school, which was an Arabic and Islamic secondary school. So I was exposed to Islamic education very early. Even before I went to the primary school, I was memorizing the Quran from the age of 6. Immediately I finished secondary school in Mahad, I went to Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt. This university was founded in the 9th century. It was the first university in the world, in Cairo. I spent 5 years in Cairo, 1 year as a foreign student learning and perfecting the language, and 4 years in the college. I read Arabic, simultaneous translation, English, Arabic language, and French. French being the third language. I came back to Nigeria, 4th year, and I did my master's at the University of Ibadan, the same city where I did my secondary school, and did my PhD at the University of Ilorin in northern Nigeria. It's closer to the north than to the south. I started teaching at the Lagos State University in 1984. That was about 25 years ago. And I've been teaching Islamic eschatology, Islamic history, and apart from that, I run an Islamic NGO called Muslim Rights Concern. I will talk about that later. My university is called Lagos State University. There are a lot of, it's a very big university. There are several faculties in the university. Engineering, medicine, social sciences, education, arts. These are the different faculties available in my university. University education is not so advanced in Nigeria because we don't have as many universities as you have here. I know the state of Massachusetts alone has more than 100 universities. The whole of Nigeria has just about 31 or 32 universities. And in Lagos State, we have only 2 universities. So, but the population in each of these universities is very high, going to about 12,000, 15,000 in some universities, 25,000 in some universities. That's that about my background, and I'll be talking about the organization I founded and its mission much later.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Thank you.
You've had a Islamic education as part of your upbringing. I think the community at Gordon would be interested in knowing what are some of the distinctive features of an Islamic education. What do you read? What do you study? What are some of the practices that are characteristic of an Islamic education in youth?
In Islamic education, you learn the scripture, and that scripture, you know, is the Quran. Mm-hmm. You not only learn the Quran, you learn the sayings of Muhammad, the prophet, and that one is called the Hadith. Mm-hmm. The Hadith, there are so many of them. There are books that are compiled of sound Hadith, and in the Quran, there are the Quran has 114 chapters, and it's quite voluminous. There are a lot of, scholars are expected to memorize important portions. Mm-hmm. But there are those who specialize in the memorization of the Quran. They are called ufaz, memorizers of the Quran. But it's not important for one to memorize the whole of it. But when you are a scholar, you need to master a number of verses which you need to use to back up your statements, your pronouncements, and to guide you in the things that you do. Mm-hmm. The teachings in the Quran are multifarious. You know, mm-hmm. They got several types of teachings in the Quran. Muslims believe there's nothing in the Quran. There is nothing, no aspect of knowledge that the Quran does not cover. Mm-hmm. There is history in the Quran. It discusses the history of Egypt, mm-hmm. The involvement of Musa, Prophet Musa, which is Moses in the Bible, mm-hmm. with the people of Israel, how he brought them out of bondage. It's in the Quran. The history of Namrud, the history of Solomon. There is history in the Quran. There is science in the Quran. Mm-hmm. The Quran teaches the growth of the fetus into embryo, from spermatozoa into clot of blood, into, and so on. It's the scientific, a lot of other issues apart from embryonic, development is contained in the Quran. The Quran discusses issues that pertain to oceanography, how the oceans are created and how they operate, how salty water and how salty water is separated from the one that has no salt, and yet there is no barrier between them. Mm-hmm. The Quran analyzes how all this happen. In the Quran, you find teachings about relationship between man and his creator, man and his parents, man and his environment. The Quran teaches that you should not cut trees indiscriminately because these trees have their own functions, and you should not kill animals indiscriminately because God gave them life and man cannot create them. You can only kill them when you need to eat them. So they have a purpose for existence. The Quran teaches so many other aspects. Also, apart from Quran Hadith, you have other aspects of education which scholars of Islam equally pursue. Literature, mm-hmm. language, mm-hmm. Geography, governance, that is politics. Mm-hmm. The Quran talks about shura, which in Western circles is democracy. Quran chapter 3, verse 159, Quran chapter 42, verse 39. These two verses explain that governance among human beings must be based on consultation. And you know, by consultation is meant before you change government, people must vote. And that is Rousseau's general will. That is democracy. That is elections. The Quran teaches how children must be brought up to make them strong and immunized against diseases. So in chapter 2, verse 233, the Quran says, mothers must breastfeed their children for 2 good years. And in modern times, we discover that science now backs up this statement of the Quran, because medical science has proved that women must breastfeed their children for 2 years to make them strong, to immunize them against diseases, and so on and so forth. The Quran teaches that man, the father, must be responsible for parents, for children he brings into this world. وَعَلَى الْمَوْلُودِ لَهُ رِزْقُهُنَّ وَكِسْوَتُهُنَّ. That's how it puts it in the Quran. That the father must make sure children are well fed, that children are well accommodated, they have good, they live in good environment, and that they are properly educated. So a situation where we give birth to children and we have overpopulation and the children are not catered for and they suffer and they are not educated and they are jobless, it's not encouraged in Islam. Yeah. So Islam therefore supports population control, because if a man knows he can only feed, educate, accommodate, and provide welfare for only 4 or 3 children, then he's got to stop breeding children after 3 or 4, after he has had 3 or 4. The Quran teaches rule of law, respect for constituted authority. Quran chapter 4, verse 59 says, "Ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulul amri minkum." Obey Allah and obey the Prophet. You know, and obey those who are in authority. Yes.
That leads to, I think, a really interesting subject that often concerns those people that are involved in interfaith dialogue. One of the challenges, I think, for those of us that are involved in trying to understand one another's faiths, are trying to understand the features of that faith that really work towards building peace.
Good.
And I know that's been a big concern of yours and your NGO. There's so much emphasis on the violence that takes place between religious traditions. I think it would be interesting to hear from your perspective as a teacher of Islam, what are those aspects of Islamic teaching that really work towards peace and reconciliation?
The issue is those aspects work for peace and reconciliation. Mm-hmm. They are designed to work, otherwise they will not be there. Mm-hmm. Because the words of God are divine. There's none that can be as wise as God. Mm-hmm. God directs Muslims to maintain dialogue, mm-hmm. particularly with the people of the book. The Christians and the Jews, these are part of the people of the book. Mm-hmm. God did not instruct Muslims to fight the people of the book or to kill. Mm-hmm. In Quran chapter 6, verse 151, God says anybody who kills another person for no just cause will have to be accountable on the day of judgment, mm-hmm. for what he has done. In Quran chapter 3, verse 64, the Quran says, call the people of the book, that is the Christians and the Jews, mm-hmm. call them to a common understanding between you, that you, as believers in a monotheistic religion, mm-hmm. will worship none but God. This is in Corinthians chapter 3, verse 64. And so, just like when you compare that to what Isaiah says in chapter 1, verse 18, come, let us reason together. That's exactly what we are doing now. That is dialogue. So, dialogue is encouraged in Islam, not violence. For that reason, we established an organization in Nigeria, headed by me. The name of the organization is Muslim Rights Concern. It's a human rights group. Its motto is dialogue, not violence. And it is designed to reorientate the mindset of Muslims in general towards dialogue loving, so that they can avoid violence. There have been too many killings, too many houses burned, too many crises, particularly in our country, Nigeria.
Yeah, in the last decade, there has been quite a bit of violence between Christians and Muslims in Nigeria. From your perspective, what are really the sources of that, and what can you do through an organization like your own NGO to address that?
I think the sources, the causes for religious violence in Nigeria can be traced to the historical background of the two religions in the country. That's number one. Then two, there is a passionate inclination on the part of Nigerians towards religion. Nigerians don't treat religion objectively. The Muslims are guilty, the Christians are guilty. Muslims feel hurt that Christians always convert their children forcefully in the schools. Therefore, they react violently anytime the Christians, anytime they come across, anytime anything else makes them angry. What we are trying to do in our organization is, yes, you can be provoked, but the Prophet Muhammad and the Quran says you should not be angry. You should control your anger. The Quran says those who control their anger, they are the lovers of Allah. They are those that God loves. Muhammad said, "Awwalul ghadab jununun wa akhiruhu nadam." The beginning of anger is like madness. The end, the result, is regret. Because by the time you get angry, you destroy things, you kill people, and in the end, when you think back in reminiscence, you find that your actions were meaningless, and you had taken a life that you could not give back. So Muslims complain of injustice, and so when they are provoked, they react violently. What we now say in the Muslim Rights Concern in our organization is, instead of getting angry and acting violently, it's natural to get angry, but control your anger. Use civilized norms. Take civilized steps, like writing a letter to the authorities, like complaining to the police. This is what we have observed in our area. This is what has been done to our children. Don't just go to the Christians and attack them. A lot of things cause this. Like I told you, there is a historical background. Islam came to Nigeria in the year 1085. That was in the 11th century, during the reign of Jilmi. The man who brought it to Nigeria was called Muhammad ibn Mani. Christianity came in the year 1842. And that gives us a difference of 800 years. A religion and a culture that people had been used to for 800 years, when the British came, they brought Christianity and they began to convert Muslim children by force. This affected a lot of families, and the Muslims reacted. Part of the reaction is still going on now. This is the truth. After independence, the British left Nigeria. But before they left Nigeria, power was in the hands, education, Western education was in the hands of the Christians in the society. So they now use that education to forcefully convert Muslim children. It still goes on now. You take a ride in a bus, you take public bus, and there are Muslims and Christians in the vehicle on the streets, and somebody will stand up and will start preaching Christianity. The Muslims complain, no, this is not acceptable. If you want to preach, go to the church, go to people's homes. You cannot disturbing the driver when he is driving is dangerous. What is happening is the preacher will not stop. The people become angry. Then the crisis in the bus will expand to the roads, to the streets, and the whole town will be on fire. So that is why I tell you that both the Christians in Nigeria and the Muslims in Nigeria have been overdoing it. One does not give justice. The other will not allow peace to reign. They react violently. So I think the way out will be to continue to bring the two groups together. Let the Muslims and the Christians sit together. Jesus Christ, preached and taught love. He preached and taught peace. He preached and taught forgiveness. Muhammad preached love. He taught forgiveness. The Quran teaches forgiveness. Quran chapter 41, verse 34. That if anybody does evil to you, don't avenge it. Give him love. He will probably become your best friend. That's what the Quran says. And the Bible says, in the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 14, forgive, that you might be forgiven. For if you forgive, if you do not forgive, neither will your Father, which is in heaven, forgive you. But Nigerian Muslims and Nigerian Christians are not using the teachings of the Bible and the teachings of the Quran. Our group happens to be opportune to know what the Quran teaches. And we are also opportune to read the Bible, so we can compare the two, and we can talk to Christians, we can talk to Muslims. And on several occasions, I have been invited to churches in Nigeria. I have been invited to television studios in Nigeria. I have sat with priests. We have discussed the question of peace in Nigeria on radio, on television. We have held open-air discussions just to nurture peace in my country.
Yeah, let me ask another question related to the relationship between the East and West. I know there's a pretty hearty debate within the United States about how Western nations ought to relate to Africa. What Western nations should do to help with humanitarian causes like hunger and infectious diseases, and what they ought to do to deal with poverty and some of the political issues. As a West African, what kind of involvement from the Western world do you think is helpful to Africa, and what kind of involvement and actions are not helpful?
Good. West Africans and Africans in general now live a life of hope in the present dispensation with President Barack Obama in office. Africans have seen the possibility of change, involvement, equal opportunities, respect for the dignity of the human person of the African man. The Muslims are beginning to see the same thing too. And so the world is moving towards taking another look at America and embracing America and supporting the policies that it introduces. Areas where the West can now move in include, there is a main, that's an area where you should focus. That is the wiping out poverty and disease. There is poverty and disease in Africa because many African leaders are corrupt. In Nigeria, the leaders are corrupt. Very few are upright. And the poverty level in Nigeria is astounding. It's preposterous. The average Nigerian lives on less than $1 per day. Per capita income is under $300. And just 1% of the Nigerian population have arrogated to themselves more than 85% of the resources. 99% of the people now scramble to share the 15% of the resources that remain, causing a lot of chaos. And it is because the people are poor. That is why it's so easy. That is why crisis, religious violence is so rampant. We think that those leaders of Africa who have been stealing the money of Africans, are making life difficult for others, spreading poverty, death, destruction, disease. America and the rest of the West have a duty to look into that matter. Where did stolen money go? Those who steal money, where do they take the money to? It has been established that more than 70% of stolen money in the world goes to banks in Switzerland. Switzerland has a law. When you save money there, it goes into a secret account, which is known by a number. Only the owner knows, and the bank will not reveal the name of the owner. This is where Nigerian thieves have taken our money. We have a saying in my country, Nigeria. This ceiling is very high. The roof is very high. I cannot reach it. If I go up here to steal your money from the roof, I cannot bring it down alone. Somebody helps me to put it down. That person must be punished. He is the real thief. So Switzerland, that helped them to put the money in safe places, is the real thief. And we call upon the United Nations to act against Switzerland, as some nations of the world which are considered threats to the rest of the world are sanctioned. I think Switzerland must be called to order, compelled to reveal the names of secret accounts by law. They must be taken to the Hague, the International Court, and if they continue to refuse, they must face sanction until Switzerland changes its policy. And people cannot steal money and save in Switzerland. If there is no corruption, we in Nigeria can live comfortably. Nigeria's oil is the second largest in the whole of Africa. Nigeria's oil is the 5th largest in the whole of in the world. So our people should not be suffering, but they are suffering because there is widespread corruption, and there is corruption because people cannot be caught. They can hide their money.
Let me ask a question about Islam and the government. I know one of the perceptions sometimes in the West is that Islamic sects, Islamic organizations want to have Sharia law or Islamic law equivalent with government policies and government law. And I'd be interested in your perspective as an Islamic scholar. What should be the relationship between religious law and government policy?
Religious law and government policy. Government in a democracy is a representation of the people. We now look at which people, if in some states, in a state, there is 99% of Muslims, 99% Muslims, that state will feel free to introduce Sharia if the people want it. Most of the states that introduced Sharia in Nigeria were dictated by this idea. The governors were pressurized, the people demanded Sharia, and they went to the legislature, state legislature, and introduced the bill. It was given the first reading, second reading, and by law, it was sent to the governor, and he assented to it. When the governor assents to his bill, it becomes law. If it is the desire of the people, then it is the general will. However, in a secular society, like the United States of America, like Britain, like Western Germany, to introduce any law, it has to be with the desire, with the agreement, with the cooperation of the people. Government will continue to run successfully so long as the policies it follows and introduces and implements are supported by the people, because the people are the real power behind governance.
You've been in the United States for a few weeks now. Anything surprise you?
Oh, quite a lot. A lot has surprised me, because I grew up in the Nigerian environment where it was believed the Westerners, and Americans in particular, love to possess guns, and that every American has 2 guns. On each, he has 2 holsters, one on the right hip, a second gun on the left hip. And so if you go to America, you must be careful. I don't talk to them when they are angry, when because you might just bring them out and pop, pop, pop. There used to be a company. I don't know the name of that company. I was a kid then. It would come to our town in Ile-Ife in a Land Rover. 2 men would drive around the city, one with a microphone, the other driving, and the man with the microphone will announce to people that there's going to be a movie in the evening. So by 7 p.m., we all will come to the town main square, open field, watching always cowboy films, a lot of shootings, and so that was all we knew about America. I almost knew John Wayne, every mark on his face. I watched him jump from the horse to the tree, from the tree to the horse, and we were marveled. On coming to Boston, coming to Massachusetts, and particularly on reaching Gordon College, I think I got a shock. Because I tried to be reserved when I first came. When I arrived at the airport, the professor that came to, Professor Pamela Thorswaldner, came to meet me at the airport. I was careful. I was watching if she had any guns. And she was so concerned about my welfare. Then I began to wonder. We reached Gordon College. Everybody I met, the professors, the students, they greeted warmly. They were very nice, very kind, very hospitable. I went to church. People cared whether people asked me if I wasn't feeling cold. And one of them took me to his house, Dr. Gedner, took me to his house and brought out a top coat that matched the color of my clothing on that day, green. And he said he had brought it, I should take it away so that I would not catch cold. I saw that on several occasions. Dr. Smith in the Global Education Office went out with me on several occasions to take me to places, and you see the concern at every step. This shows me indubitably that the American citizen is a completely human person, humane, hospitable, warm, and kind. so many elderly couples took me, invited me for dinner. It wasn't in my schedule. But meeting me in the church, they were so happy. And sometimes I wonder, how could these people be doing this to me? And they know I am a Muslim. Why are they so kind? And that shows that if really we allow the true teachings of religion to rule our lives, the world will be a better place. When Jesus spoke about love and Muhammad spoke about love, I found the love spoken about here. I found the hospitality spoken about here. And I think this experience is going to live with me for a long, long time. And I have no doubt in my mind that with what, I am much more equipped now to fight religious violence and religious discrimination in my NGO. Because it had happened before. 5 years ago in 2004, when I came to Washington for a training, Washington, D.C., for a training, we didn't meet anybody then. We were moving from the office to our hotel, which was the next building. So I didn't learn much about America then. But I learned a lesson too. On Friday, like this, I asked to be taken to a mosque for prayers. And when he was taking me to the mosque, we passed George Washington University and took the street by the right. We were going down. Then there was this church on the right. I saw the church, and the man who was leading me went into the church. He wanted to walk in. I called him, excuse me. I said, I'm a Muslim. I need a mosque. I don't need a church. He said, just follow me. He got outside the church, then went down the pavement. There was a flight of stairs. He went to the basement, and the whole of the basement was as open as this, very large. It was being used as a mosque. And I prayed there with hundreds of Muslims. But I asked them, how long have you been using this place as a mosque? They said, close to 6 years or so. I took that lesson to Nigeria. Here in America, a mosque is situated in the basement of a church. That means the church owns the building. And Muslims are here, Christians are there. They are not shooting one another, but we are shooting one another in Nigeria, even though the church is always far from the mosque. Yeah. So this is one lesson. I have spoken about it in several places in Nigeria, and I will continue to take that lesson home.
Well, we're grateful that you've been here. We're very pleased that you've had a wonderful time with us, and we've certainly enriched our community. So let's give Dr. Akintola a hand for his time here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.